Good morning. It's Monday. I know I just ended a vlog yesterday, but I thought I'd jump right into another one because there are a couple of book challenges going on right now that I want to participate in. So I figured perfect opportunity for another vlog. I have my coffee. This is my favorite mug because it is quite literally the size of my head. And that is the level of coffee I need in the morning to become a human. So the two book challenges that are going on right now, the first one is by the ever lovely Julie at Librarian, and she's doing a blurb telephone. So you pick a book, and then based upon the blurbs on that book, you pick an author from one of those blurbs and read one of their books, and so on and so forth. So I did put a poll on my Instagram for two different options. The first option was these three, and this was actually the winner of the poll, but I'm actually going to go with the other stack, and I'll explain why. So the other challenge is Jessica of Jessica's Book Stack on Instagram is doing another tiny book challenge. So the other stack that I was going to do for Julie's blurb telephone is this one here. And the reason why I think I'm going to do this one is because the final book in the stack, which is Sempre Susan, and it's a Susan Sontag memoir by Sigrid Nunez. Oh, that traffic is loud. I'm filming in this room right now because I don't have a ton of natural light in my house. It's not great. There are very limited rooms where I can go and sit and actually have some natural light on my face. So I'm trying this out. It's very loud. I guess I could shut the window. Okay, that might help. So the last book in that stack is Sempre Susan, which is a tiny. So I figure if one challenge runs into Jessica's tiny book challenge, my third is already a tiny, so I can kind of combine the two. So that's why I'm doing this stack. So everyone who voted on Instagram, please don't hate me. I value your opinion and thank you so much for voting, but this just makes more sense for this week and then gliding into Jessica's tiny book challenge. And then if after that, maybe I'll read the other stack, and then that way I've read both. The three books, as I mentioned, I'm starting with Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. And I have read The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, which I believe she also wrote. And I really loved that collection of short stories. And I believe this is nonfiction. So these are kind of memoir, biography type stories. And I mean, can we take a moment for this cover? So beautiful. So that's the first one. The second one, which Laura Van Den Berg has a blurb on. Should I read the blurbs? Does that make sense? She says, when I read Mariana Enriquez stories, I forget where I am. I miss my subway stop. I hold my breath. Her fiction, oh, it is fiction. I stand corrected. Her fiction is that pulse-racingly superb, that electric and original. Mariana Enriquez is an essential voice in contemporary fiction, and Things We Lost in the Fire will be a sensation. That was Laura's blurb for this book. So then I actually have two from this author, but I've heard from so many people how great this collection of stories is. First and foremost, Jaylen at Bar in the Bookcase. I've heard him rave about this a few times, so I've been meaning to get to it. And this one is blurbed by Sigrid Nunez. And Sigrid says, another bravura display from one of our most imaginative storytellers. Each enthralling new plot seeks to uncover the essence of human experience by way of the uncanny, as enchanting as fairy tales, as mysterious as dreams. These exquisitely composed fictions are as urgent and original as any being written today. So, very excited. I think it's going to be great. And for my Sigrid, even though I think I have 3 or 4 of hers, she's an author I know I'll love. Every time I see her, I pick it up. And I've been meaning to read The Friend forever, but this just fits into the Tinies week. It's just too perfect to be able to just kind of merge the two challenges. Jessica's Tiny Book Challenge starts this Sunday, and then it goes into the next Sunday. So that way, I have these two short story collections to read this week, and then if I don't get to this before Sunday, I can read it on Sunday, and it can be my first Tiny as well. So for Jessica's Tiny Book Challenge, I did pull a stack of books off of my shelves. I have quite a few Tinies, so I'm just going to quickly go through all of them. I won't describe them in too much detail. Pause for a sip of coffee. Hi friends, it is Monday afternoon, and I watched some of that footage back from this morning, and I realized that the quality of the video after I shut the window just really went downhill. So I thought I would just re-record Tiny's part, so that way you don't have to watch that whole section of me chatting away in such terrible video quality. So the first one, which I actually newly added to the pile, is In the Eye of the Wild by Natasha Martin. This Tiny is a memoir, and it surrounds the bear attack of the author and then kind of takes you through her recovering from that, her moving past that trauma, and bouncing back from that horrific incident. It sounds really interesting, but I've heard mixed reviews on it, so I guess we'll see. Some people really love it, and some people were kind of underwhelmed, so I'm really curious about this one. Next, I have Hotel by Joanna Walsh. This essentially is Joanna went around to different hotels and was writing reviews, and then kind of wrote about her experience doing that. The formatting is a little experimental, so I'm really curious as to Joanna Walsh's writing. I also have, I think it's called Breakup by her, and I think that her books will be really different from anything I've read before. So looking forward to that one. Next is Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid. Jamaica Kincaid is hands down one of my favorite authors. I read A Small Place and Lucy last year, and Lucy was one of my favorite reads of the year. And I've been meaning to get to another Jamaica this year and just haven't gotten around to it. So perfect excuse during this Tiny Reads. This is one of her smaller novels, and I feel like one of her more well-known novels as well. So I think it's going to be a good one. Next, I have a poetry collection by Louise Gluck, Faithful and Virtuous Night. I have read a few other collections from her and loved them all, so I'm really looking forward to this one. And this is very, very slim. I think this will easily be read in a day. Next, I have Night by Edna O'Brien. I've been wanting to read Edna O'Brien for so long. I don't know why I haven't. And I think this is a good one to start with, not only because it's slim, but also I've heard lots of people rave about this particular O'Brien, so I'm really excited. I think her writing and her use of language is really beautiful and poetic, and I think it's going to be right up my alley, so I'm really looking forward to that. The next one I have is Runaway by Jory Graham. I read Fast by Jory Graham last month, and which I talked about in my August wrap-up, and I will link that video. And just fully blown away by her writing. It's really different. It's unlike any other poetry that I've read, and just so profound, and her use of language is incredibly impressive. So I'm really excited to get to another collection of hers. Next, I have A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. This is another one that I've heard lots of people talk about, and I hear that the prose is supposed to be incredible. So excited for that one. Next, Boulder by Eva Balthazar. In that same August wrap-up, I talk about how much I loved Permafrost. I think it's going to be one of my favorite books of the year. It was incredible. I love her writing. I had just started Permafrost and immediately pre-ordered this one because I knew that I was going to want to read her newest book. This is at the very top of my list for Tiny Book Week. If Sempre Susan isn't the first that I read, this one will be, but I will absolutely be reading this during that week. I've been looking forward to it since it came in the mail. And lastly, Passing by Nella Larson. This is one that was in my pile for the last Tiny Book Challenge. It's one that's been on my shelves for, I think, at least a year. I can't believe that I haven't gotten to it yet. I know I'm going to love it. People say nothing but good things about it. So I'm really excited to finally read it. And so I think that I will make this a priority as well during Tiny Book Week. Right after Boulder, I think I'm going to pick up Passing and make sure I get it read. And that is my pile. Those are all my tinies. In no way will I read that many tinies. I just kind of pulled all of the ones off my shelves that I know I'm eager to read and most interested in. But I'll probably only read, if I were to guess, probably only 5 of these. So we'll see how it goes. Boulder and Passing being the first 2, and then we'll see what other 3 I mood read that week. But I'm very excited for the challenge. So I will continue to check in as I start the first book challenge from Julie at Librarian and her Blurb telephone, and let you know how that's going when I start the first book. So I'll check in. Hi there. It is now Thursday. It has been relentlessly raining pretty much all week. The sun came out for a quick second today, and now it's back to clouds and rain. I am still reading Things We Lost in the Fire. I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through and probably have read 5 or 6 stories at this point. And I really like it. It is very similar to her other collection, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. All of the stories are quite creepy and lean on the horror genre. Even in the front flap, I realized later that they compare her stories to Shirley Jackson, and which they most certainly are. All very creepy. Some of them have a more supernatural component to them that make them creepy. But there are also stories that are just kind of disturbing, that deal with kind of a terrible incident or a terrible thing happening. They all take place in contemporary Argentina, and Mariana Enriquez really sets the tone of that too. It's very atmospheric. You really can feel the setting of Argentina as she describes it, which I'm really liking. And it's been kind of a slow reading week for me, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that I can finish this by tomorrow so I can start the other collection. And it's looking like I will be starting Sempre Susan, the last in the Blurb telephone, but on Sunday, so it will also be my first tiny for the Tiny Book Challenge. So yeah, that's the update. I will continue to keep you posted as I read, and hopefully I can check in tomorrow and have started the Laura Van Den Berg collection. Talk to you later. Again, it's Wednesday. No, I haven't checked in since last Thursday because I'm terrible at vlogging. But I did finish 2 of the 3 books in Blurb Telephone, so I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about them, and the 3rd book as well. So the first, I finished Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. This was fantastic. It was so good. Each story individually was great. I feel like there weren't many that I felt were kind of weaker stories within the collection. I thought they were all really strong stories. They were all very horror forward. I mentioned earlier that she's compared to Shirley Jackson, which I think is an accurate comparison. They are all really chilling, really haunting, and they really stick with you. And I think what's unique about Enriquez is not just in this collection, but also in our collection of The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. They both weave in Argentinian history and also some of the struggles that are even currently going on within Argentina. So I think you get kind of this really atmospheric and immersive experience into Argentina life while layering in supernatural presences like ghosts and other evil sort of presence, supernatural entities. So I think that the stories are really layered as well as being spooky and creepy. So I think that this is a fantastic collection. I liked it just as much as The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. I think you can't go wrong with either collection. She wrote this one first, I believe, but fantastic. Cannot recommend this book enough. Next, I didn't check in at all while I was reading this book, but I did read and finish I Hold a Wolf by the Ears by Laura Van Den Berg. This one, and maybe it's because I read these two side by side, but I'll be honest, this one felt a little lacking since I read it directly after reading Things We Lost in the Fire. While this was still a really good collection, it's described in sort of the same manner as Things We Lost in the Fire, and that it's supposed to be kind of creepy and discomforting, but I didn't find the stories nearly as unsettling as I did the other ones. I think this was still a strong collection of stories, and I still really enjoyed it. I found that they were there's more a theme of sadness amongst the stories and flawed nature within all of the characters. So there certainly were stories that were unsettling in their own way, in that there's, for example, one about a woman who experiences having given birth to a stillborn baby, which is just so heart-wrenching and crushing to read about. And there were certainly other aspects of it that might have been an element of more supernatural. For instance, somebody going up into a tree and disappearing forever. So I think that there was a little portion of that, certainly not as much as Things We Lost in the Fire, but there were some components. But I think it was more unsettling in it was kind of getting to the root of human experience and the darkness within that and just people's worst selves. I think there was a good representation of that, and I think that really came through, but I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a creepy or haunting collection of stories. And I think between the two, I think the stories in this book are ones that I will be thinking about and will actually haunt me afterwards, whereas these were really enjoyable, but I wouldn't say are long-lasting stories, but still two excellent and strong short story collections, and I would recommend them both either way. So the final book in the Blurb Telephone is Sempre Susan, which is also my first tiny, and yes, the Tiny Book Challenge did start this past Sunday, and I still haven't even finished my first, but one book at a time. I'm about 50 pages in and absolutely loving this book. The way Sigrid Nunez describes Susan Sontag, it makes you want to have known her personally. And so the book starts out where Sigrid is working at the New York Review of Books, and she gets assigned to be the assistant to Susan Sontag to kind of go through a lot of her letters, help her with her writing. And after she starts to work for her, she meets her son David, and they end up dating, and she actually ends up moving in with Susan Sontag and her son and living with Susan for a period of time. And so she's writing about that experience and just knowing Susan as a person. It seemed like she knew her pretty much up until her passing in her 70s. So I think she knew her for about 30-year period. So it's really interesting to get an inside look into a prolific and admired author, and Sigrid Nunez is just a fantastic writer. So I'm really enjoying this, and this is my first Nunez and certainly will not be my last. I am a fool for not having read The Friend yet. So many people have raved about it, and I think I just need to get to it next month. This is my sign to read more Nunez. But I think I'll be able to finish this probably tonight, hopefully. But I thought also that I would end this portion of the vlog here, just because already I think this part is going to be almost 20 minutes, and Jessica extended her tiny book challenge to 2 weeks. So to do 2 challenges in one vlog, it would end up being like an hour vlog, and I'm not going to make anyone watch that. So I think I'll end the first part here with the Blurb telephone and review this fully in the beginning of the next vlog as part of the tiny book challenge. But this Blurb telephone was amazing. I already have at least 3 or 4 other stacks that I've put together that I can do for Blurb telephone. So I might do another vlog based upon Julie's book challenge. And thank you to Julie for coming up with Blurb telephone. It was super fun and just a great way to get through your physical TBR, because we all have so many books, and I feel like if your taste it lies within a certain genre, usually authors that you like and want to read are blurbing other books that you're reading or want to read. So fantastic book challenge. So yeah, the next vlog I will record all of my tinies that I read over the next couple weeks. I think I mentioned before, my brother is coming in tomorrow night and is staying through the weekend. So I don't know how much reading I'll get done, but I will take you guys along on any adventures that we go on. I'm sure we'll go to some breweries and eat some good food. So yeah, should be good. And next week after he leaves on Monday, I'll be able to fully get back into my tiny stack. Speaking of tinies, after Jessica announced that she was extending it to 2 weeks, I added some more to the pile. And so I'm just going to quickly go through some of the other ones I've added. And from the beginning of the video to the end, if there are any tinies that you think that I absolutely 100% need to get to during this challenge, just drop a comment and let me know which ones are priority. So some of the other ones, I added Sleepless Nights by Elizabeth Hardwick, Joan Didion, Let Me Tell You What I Mean, The Faces by Tove Ditlevsen, The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald, The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. This is one that has been in my TBR for too long, so this is probably one I should make a priority. The Dinner Guest by Gabriela Ybarra. Practicalities by Marguerite Duras. This is one that Rachel Kushner talks about a lot, and I believe mentions in her essay collection, The Heart Crowd. So this is one that I'm really keen to get to. And lastly, The Appointment by Katharina Volkmar. So if any of those are ones that you've read and loved, let me know. I'll make sure to read them, and I will report about them in my next vlog for the Tiny Book Challenge. So I will see you next time.